We've had Gerard on camera twice so far, 2-0 on camera today. He's put on a pretty good display today. He is 3-1-1 on day 2. Looking to make that 4-1-1 and get himself into the top 8, but Andrew's going to hope to have something to say about that.
Yeah, Gerard with a very unfortunate pairing last round against the #1 overall seed, who's in a position just to lock up the #1 seed with a win. No incentive to draw because he was locked for top 8 regardless. And Gerard, unfortunately, a victim of circumstances there, took a loss and now needs to win here to lock up a spot in the top 8.
All right, so it'll be Jessup on the play. He's over on your left side. Gerard, Fabiano on the draw. It's still tie. He's on the right. Jessup was on a 6-card hand, but he's going to have a fast start and Noble Hierarch. And we're looking at Gerard's hand. He's got some of that early disruption. Serum Visions, Inquisition of Kozilek, and Mana Leak all at the ready, but will it be enough to contain Jessup's draw?
And if you want a summary for the problem that Gerard has in the matchup, at least game 1, it is Thrytusk. He's just not showing up to fight this kind of fight. The cards we've seen out of his deck have been really, really good against the mid-range decks and the combo decks, but in fact, his answers, at least game 1, don't quite line up the right way.
Well, he's got a good chance here. He's got an Inquisition of Kozilek turn 1, and he can get all the Infectors out of Jessup's hand. We see Spellskite, Ichor Claw Mirror, Might of Old Krosa, and Distortion Strike. Only one Infector. If Gerard takes it, he can maybe buy himself a lot of turns.
For sure. You know, and this is a part of the problem with the Infect deck is there's only so many Infect creatures to get the ball rolling with. And now, Jessup having mulliganed on a 1 Infect creature hand, Gerard's got a pretty good shot of at least he can cross his fingers and hope that Jessup never finds something to rebuild with. The Spellskite is problematic because it means if Jessup does find a creature, he's got a lot of insurance, but until that happens, Gerard's in good shape.
Yeah, and Gerard does have Mana Leak, so this is the turn. Can Andrew find another Infector? And he does not. It's going to be Spellskite, no second land. Passes it back to Gerard. And what an opening for him in game 1 here.
Yep. Like we said, given the quality of his sideboard for the matchup, if he's able to steal game 1, he's got a great shot at taking this match and getting to the top 8.
Looks like we're going to go back to Gerard. A little bit of a just re-sleeving is all.
Yep.
This is the Inquisition he has already cast. And drop turn, another Inquisition of Kozilek may just go at Andrew's hand, and that's exactly what he's going to do. You see the draw for the turn was another Noble Hierarch. So we can leave Andrew with just Distortion Strike and Might of Old Krosa. A long ways off from being lethal.
Magic players, if you signed up for the Legacy
Not sure you
Challenge,
go, looks like,
please come see Patrick at side events.
let's see what he goes for.
If you signed up for the Legacy
None of them
Challenge,
seem to be too
please
concerning.
come see Patrick
No.
at side events.
Again, until an Infector shows up here, Andrew's on going Manual Spile with Spellskite here, which is not a great game plan.
And we go back over, looks like the Might of Old Krosa was taken. He's just going to want to take the cards that are this adept at dealing damage, and it's the big pump spell here. Leave Andrew with just the second Noble Hierarch as his play. The Spellskite can exalt up to a 2/6. It'll swing in and put Gerard down to 15.
Boom.
No more lands for Andrew just yet. He does, however, have a Glistener Elf that he drew here with Spellskite protection. That could be a threat.
Yeah, and the one of that you mentioned here, the one of Golgari Charm, boy, would that be good for Gerard to find.
Yeah, absolutely. Gerard's going to start the turn here with Serum Visions. He knows he's not just going to die next turn, but that is a 3 poison per turn attack here, which Andrew can do. With the help of Distortion Strike, that's a 3-turn clock.
On top of that, it means that Gerard can't block his way out of this. The other problem for Gerard at this point is nearly all of Jessup's draws are very good from this spot.
Yeah, Pump is good here. A second Infector is not terrible. Protection spells like Apostle's Blessing is pretty decent too.
Now, Gerard's got some enormous draws of his own. The Golgari Charm is obviously great here. He has 2 copies of Damnation, which is probably a game winner unless Jessup can quickly find a Nexus. But he needs to find those cards very, very quickly.
Yeah, he basically just needs one of these sweepers. Of which he doesn't have that many.
Attention players, once again, if you sign up for the Legacy Challenge...
Still resolving right now the scry on his Serum Visions as to just what he wants to do.
Also, I'm happy to announce that...
It's possible he just needs to be very greedy and just those 3 cards you mentioned, the 2 Damnations and the Golgari Charm, maybe ship anything that's not them.
Yeah, I don't know if Gerard can win the game at this point, going tit for tat. The other line of play he can get to is something like, I'll Abrupt Decay your Spellskite, next turn Snapcaster, Abrupt Decay. That might be enough for him to get to the finish line here, but I think he does have to be very aggressive in looking for one of the sweepers.
Well, top and bottom is where the scry cards are placed, so we'll see next turn just what was kept on top. We go back over to Gerard. Mana Leak in his hand, as well as that Thragtusk you mentioned. It is a game winner, but not something... I mean, I guess if he gets it on the board, it can perhaps trade with Glistener Elf. Except Distortion Strike will have something to say about that.
It's not bad insofar as any creature is okay to block with, but Thragtusk is really slow to the party.
Yeah. Untapped Breeding Pool from Gerard. And we'll go back to Andrew, see what more he can get. It doesn't actually take very much.
And now a Blighted Agent drawn for Andrew that compounds the problem from Gerard's side. Probably pushes the game to the spot where just one-for-one answers are no longer going to get it done in time.
Glistener Elf will exalt up to a 3/3 and swing. If you're Andrew, is there even a point to playing the Blighted Agent?
I mean, it's more insulation against Gerard chaining together multiple pieces of removal in a short time frame.
I suppose the sweepers that you're dead to, you're dead to regardless of whether you play this card.
It's possible that Gerard's line of play next turn is also Snapcaster Mage, hit you with another discard spell, get the Distortion Strike out of your hand, and try to block. And Blighted Agent's very good if that's Gerard's line of play.
Yeah, Blighted Agent is just a better natural attacker than Glistener Elf, so upgrading your 1/1 into a 1/1 unblockable may just be worth it. And that's what Andrew's going to go ahead and do. Gerard, not going to let that one happen. It's going to be Mana Leak. Either way, though, that clears the way for Distortion Strike, perhaps. So we'll go back over to Gerard. What was the card he kept on top with his scry?
I believe it was Abrupt Decay, and I think Gerard's plan now is try to chain together multiple removal spells. He does have Snapcaster Mage available, so if he can survive, he can get the Spellskite off the table, then get the Glistener off of the table, and as long as Andrew doesn't draw too much substance in the next couple of turns, a Replacement Infector or just a pump spell to kill him, Gerard might be able to claw back into the game.
Abrupt Decay first for the Spellskite, Snapcaster, Abrupt Decay for the Glistener Elf. That should be good enough. Right now, Andrew does not have Gerard dead next turn. However, all it takes is something like a Become Immense for that to change. Gerard going to play a tapped Creeping Tar Pit, and it's going to be Snapcaster on Inquisition of Kozilek, taking out that Distortion Strike.
And yeah, Gerard now trying to at least get one chump block in.
Yep, he needs to dodge any pump spell here. Might of Old Crowsup, Become Immense, Vines of Vastwood are all just lethal right now. Well, sorry, he has the block. I should stand corrected. He can chump here.
Yep.
He doesn't, no longer has the Distortion Strike to make that lethal. Go over to Gerard's turn now. Maybe just gonna jam Thragtusk.
The much maligned Thragtusk, pretty solid in the spot. Distortion Strike no longer available. It can block through the Exalted triggers.
Yeah, and I actually like this line that Gerard has played. The Snapcaster into Inquisition line, then opens up Thragtusk next turn. It did beat Andrew's whole hand at the time, and Gerard was aware of this when he started it. There he goes, 5/3, gains 5. That's not the relevant part, though. That is the 5/3. It'll almost certainly trade with any Glistener Elf. You saw last turn, Andrew's Jessup Straw actually was the copy of Become Immense. So he still needs something like Apostle's Blessing or Distortion Strike to make this Become Immense lethal.
Yeah, there's not a lot to be gained by trading with the Thragtusk or using your Become Immense because your Exalted triggers still don't push you back through the Beast token the following turn. So I think Andrew needs to hold tight for either a Nexus, Blighted Agent, or some way to punch through the Thragtusk.
Yep, the Become Immense is actually just so much game, though. Gerard being at 3 poison means that if any creature ever connects with Become Immense, that's 7 more poison. That's just lethal.
That said, it's becoming harder and harder until Jessup finds another Infector. The board's getting locked up here. Gerard's getting to a spot where he can chain together a couple pieces of removal spell, maybe get the Glistener off the table, and put Jessup in a spot where he needs to find Nexus or Blighted Agent specifically to be able to win the game.
It's going to be Ashiok from Gerard. That'll plus up to 5 and mill. What I do like, though, in Andrew's chances is that even if Gerard sweeps the board, all it really seems to take is one Inkmoth Nexus, and Andrew just might win off it.
Right.
Gerard leaving off Abrupt Decay, he will pass. Fetch from Andrew, trying to get rid of as many dead draws as possible.
But you can see, the game 1 problem issue with Gerard in the matchup. He's played very, very well. Jessup Mulligan has not found Inkmoth Nexus yet. Gerard's been able to cobble together some good turns. And he's still by no means out of the woods. Just one good draw from Jessup, either a way to get around the Thragtusk or some Nexus / Blight Agent effect, and it all may be for naught.
We see, what is it, upwards of 11 live draws here. He's got the Distortion Strikes, the Apostle's Blessings, the Ink Moths. All excellent here. Another Spellskite was the draw for Jessup. That's not going to do it.
I mean, it's more insulation against a piece of spot removal. So I don't mind casting the Spellskite here.
Yeah. A Bladed Agent is actually a pretty live draw for Jessup as well, with all these Spellskites.
Absolutely. And I'm not really looking to hold back the Spellskite in case of Damnation because I don't think Jessup's being Damnation this game anyway.
Going back over Gerard's turn. At some point, he may start. Well, not yet. At some point, he will want to create a board where he can start attacking.
He doesn't want to sit here forever. I mean, Creeping Tar Pit, sit behind Thragtusk and Ashiok is not a terrible game plan here.
He can actually swing both Tar Pit and Thragtusk.
This is a 2-turn clock.
Yeah, the plan probably is to make Glistener Elf back on defense. And I like this. And Jessup's going to go ahead and chump Noble Hierarch on the Thragtusk. So he goes down to 13.
Round 2 is up on the boards. Make your way to your seat. Standard challenge.
And yep, Andrew's Glistener Elf will come off from Ashiok. That'll be ready to block and trade with a potential Glistener Elf attack. 7th land for Gerard, and in 8th land he can actually double activate these Creeping Tar Pits. Not an irrelevant line. Jessup's still trying to find a way to push this Become Immense in his hand through. Right now, it does not look like he still is not able to. He's not found one of his ways to push it in.
Oh.
Spellskite is going to attack. That's going to attack at Ashiok. No, I like it a lot. It's a 1/5.
Yeah, sure. No reason not to. Gerard probably doesn't block. It's a small thing, but if you're not doing anything with a Spellskite anyway, might as well.
Yep. Ashiok goes down to 3. Heads up play there by Jessup. Draw for the turn was Verdant Catacombs. Go back to Gerard. Attacks will continue. Tar Pit activated again. Or perhaps not. It looks like Gerard has drawn his copy of Compulsive Research. And that's got to be a good one. If he can find one of his sweepers off this, the king can get a lot less stressful for Gerard.
Yeah, Damnation would sew it up from the spot. Even with Gerard losing some of his board, he would have a beast left over plus the Ashiok.
Yeah, does not find it, but he'll go for Serum Visions. A lot of dig here for Gerard. Draw was Darkslick Shores for the turn. And it does seem like Gerard has a winning line here on board. It's just pretty slow. He'd like to speed that up.
Yeah, you're still looking at a potentially 2-turn window where Nexus or Apostle's Blessing is still good.
And Maelstrom Pulse was one of the cards captured by Gerard. That's going to be a pretty good one. It's going to take care of both copies of Spellskite.
If you are in the two-headed giant,
Pulse a 1-of in Gerard's main deck. But pretty good here. Now just 1 kill spell should do it for Gerard.
And what's interesting now is Jessup has to chump block this Thragtusk if it goes on the offensive, because if he fails to do so, the Thragtusk brings him down to 8, now 7 because of the fetch land. And then the 2 copies of Creeping Tar Pit finish off the game next. Or sorry, he would still be at a cushion, so he doesn't have to chump block quite yet.
Now it's not clear what if the Noble Hierarch is doing much for him. He's really just, he's got to find one of these ways to get through, and probably has to find it next turn.
Yeah. And maybe not even anymore, because all of Gerard's spot removal is now turned back on.
The mill, Mutagenic Growth, Vines of Astwood, Vines of Astwood. 3 things that Andrew did not want to draw. That'll work. Thrag Tusk swings in and does look like Andrew's reaching for the chump block. Perhaps not. He'll go down to 7. A Dark Side Shores post-combat from Gerard. Now he does have 8 mana. As you said, those 2 double activations of Creeping Tar Pits. And this is the turn. Does Andrew find something?
He gets one more crack at it next turn if Gerard has nothing.
Yeah, at that point, cards like Blighted Agent and Ink Moth no longer outs, however.
Although the problem is if it involves Apostle's Blessing, if Gerard just animates the 2 Nexuses and attacks, then Apostle's Blessing is no longer castable. Because he either has a chump block with a Noble Hierarch, and then he's without white mana, so Phyrexian mana is a cost he can't pay. Or he's chumping blocking with the Glistener Elf, and he has no Infector.
See if Gerard makes that play. That'd be pretty. That does take away one of Andrew's outs. He's gonna go with Serum Visions instead. Does take Gerard off 8 mana, so unlikely. But he's gonna go for that.
Unless his other card in hand was an untapped land, in which case casting the Serum Visions is a freebie.
And actually, it's just going to be the Thrag Tusk in this turn.
And all this doesn't really matter at all if Gerard has a removal spell for the Glistener Elf.
That's gonna be Noble Hierarch jumping in front of Thrag Tusk.
At this point, even just a non-green creature gets the job done for Gerard.
Well, Creeping Tar Pit's a non-green creature.
Right, so he can just hold that up on defense.
So then it's just limiting Andrew to that other copy of Distortion Strike. There was the Apostle's Blessing off the top. Ashok continues milling. And those 3 are going to get milled off. See if that removal spell is waiting, and it is. It's the copy of Abrupt Decay, had been there for so long. Gerard is going to take care of Glistener Elf, and that is going to be Andrew's last creature. Tarmogoyf, and I don't think Andrew has an out anymore.
Right, that's just too much to overcome. And there's a concession, yeah, there's no way for Jessup to come back from that.
All right, so game 1 over to Gerard Fabiano. He is up on Andrew Jessup, 1-0. Remember this one, winner will make it into top 8. Loser will be on the outside looking in, so a lot riding on this match.
And as we mentioned before, Gerard with a lot of upgrades in the sideboard.
Yeah, so as these players go to the sideboard, we're going to look at some of our upcoming tournaments. If you're trying to find one near you, we went through Season 2. We're going to look at our Season 3 schedule. This is starting in the middle of summer, leading up toward our 3rd Invitational here on the East Coast in New Jersey. That's going to start with our Modern Grand Prix in Charlotte, June 12th through 14th.
Given our attendance at the last time we had a Grand Prix in Charlotte, which was at the time a record-breaking limited Grand Prix, and the attendance we've had for our modern events, both the Grand Prix in Richmond and in Baltimore, we expect a huge Grand Prix here. Indianapolis, Baltimore, and Chicago for the first time in July. Those will all be standard open series, a standard open series in Richmond, a modern open series back in the area in DC after that, standard Grand Prix in London. We'll have more information about that very exciting tournament as we get closer to the event. A Legacy Open Series in Charlotte. And then the Season 3 Invitational in New Jersey, a standard open series tied to the Standard and Legacy Invitational at the end of August, the 28th through 30th. Me, you, and Cedric Phillips will be calling that one.
All right, so a lot of good tournaments coming up in the fall of this year. Going back to our match, Andrew Jessup now down a game. We said before that it would be a steal if Gerard could get game 1, and that's exactly what he did. Going to the sideboard, he's got a lot of weapons going to start here. 2 copies of Spellskite, those figure to be very good against Infect. 3 copies of Disfigure, excellent. One of the difficulties he has here is that he can't play his spells as quickly as Andrew will. He should be able to fix that with Disfigure. An additional Thoughtseize, an additional copy of Damnation, and then that Knight of Souls Betrayal we were talking about.
There's some other good matches besides that, or some rather good cards here besides that as well. 2 copies of Fulminator Mage to shore up Inkmoth Nexus. Vendilion Click is a potential blocker for Inkmoth Nexus, and just information and selective discard is powerful against that deck, and Sower of Temptation as well. So some very solid options here for Gerard. On the other side of the table, Andrew here with 4 copies of Nature's Claim, a Dispel, 2 Spell Pierces, 2 copies of Spellskite, a Wild Defiance, 2 copies of Dismember, a Dryad Arbor, a Twisted Image, and a Distortion Strike. So I think the 2 copies of Dismember can pretty safely come in here. Gerard's got Tarmogoyfs, Tassakers, and so forth. I think the counter spells and Dispel and Spell Pierce are pretty helpful here. I don't know how much he's going to want to do with the Disenchants here. He has 4 copies of Nature's Claim. Gerard has Spell Skies, which are problematic. He also has Nice Soul Betrayal, which is very hard to win through. That said, there just aren't that many targets, period. So I could see 0 coming in. I could see 2 coming in. I don't think you're going to see the full 4. And if he's aware of Gerard's Spell Skies, I think the 1 copy of Twisted Image is pretty safe to bring in.
Yeah, the cards like Dispel and Spell Pierce, they're a great way for Andrew to fight against this deck in that he's really going to try to counter Gerard's removal with his own counter spells. Then again, though, we have seen that Gerard's deck isn't particularly weak to that. We have watched him play against Blue-Red Twin earlier against Ross Miriam in our first round of the day, and he was able to sculpt games where he was able to blank cards like Dispel out of Ross's deck. While he does play some number of instants, it's not so many that he's just always going to get hit by it.
Exactly. I mean, there are some high-impact ones, but of course Abrupt Decay can't be countered. Disfigure, there's a couple, but it's definitely not a lights-out card against Gerard, and I think that a lot of people will probably miss sideboard against him as a result because it just looks like the deck where Dispel would be very good, but Gerard's deck is very sorcery-oriented. He's got a lot of discard spells, so he knows about your Dispel if it's there. It's definitely underperformed against him on camera thus far.
Yeah, now if Gerard's boarding in the 3 Disfigures, it's probably still worth the Dispel slot, but it's by no means a great card here. It's just a playable one, I
Exactly.
think.
Yeah, I agree with that assessment.
How do you feel about Spellskite out of Andrew's side? He does have 2 in the main. We saw that they were good in that matchup, but not backbreaking by any means. Gerard having, especially now that when Gerard has access to more sweeper-style cards in Golgari Charm, a 3rd Damnation, a Knight of Souls Betrayal, how much does Andrew want to get behind Spellskite as his shield?
I don't think very much. Dispel and Spell Pierce kind of fill the same role. Spellskite in this matchup is looking at absorbing 1 piece of removal, more or less. And when you consider the fact that Gerard has sweepers like Damnation, I would rather have the counter spells, which answer Damnation, rather than a Spellskite, which trades the same way with a removal spell and is another thing that gets swept up in the event that Gerard has Damnation.
Yeah, there's at least 5 removal spells in Gerard's deck that Spellskite just doesn't shield creatures from.
So I think that it would underperform in this matchup.
We're going to be underway for game 2. Jessup will be on the play again. Last time was on a 6-card hand. It was heavy on action, light on infect creatures, and with the help of a couple Inquisition of Kozilek, Gerard was able to pick apart Andrew's hand and eventually bridge his way into the late game.
Yeah, it was a hairy game there, but Gerard was able to get to the finish line with discard, some blockers, Thratus especially.
Yeah, had to dodge some draw steps. At any point, Andrew was looking to hit a card like Apostle's Blessing or Distortion Strike.
Amod Nexus as well would have been a huge draw at any point in that game. And you saw Gerard at the end there, not a lot going on. He could have perhaps fended it off for a little while on the back of Creeping Tar Pit because there's only 2 Exalted Triggers, but that's still not a game that Gerard's looking to play.
And that's a tough start for Andrew. As you mentioned going into this match, Inkmoth Nexus is one of Gerard's best, or one of the cards that's best against Gerard.
So still a lot of pressure here on Jessup to find now very specific cards for this matchup. Mulliganing and Gerard having so much more juice in his deck than he had game 1.
Andrew on a 6-card hand on the play, debating whether or not he wants to keep. Gerard has kept on 7, and we are underway. Once again, a 6-on-7, but with enough tempo, that shouldn't matter. Especially this time, Andrew is going to get his key card. This is Inkmoth Nexus to start the game.
And what's very interesting about the style decks that Gerard has built, as you see at Thoughtseize, is that an added advantage that Gerard's decks have is that because there's so many 1-for-1 trades and so much just general high power level, if you mulligan, you're in so much trouble because he's just going to pick your hand apart with discard spells, chain together removal spells with Snapcaster Mage, get to Cryptic Command. It's all of these decks that he builds are so punishing to people who mulligan, and some decks are better at capitalizing on mulligans than others. Gerard with so many 1-for-1 trades can really maximize that.
And I really like how Gerard's setting us up. He thought he's away a Spellskite, leaving Andrew with 2 lands and 2 copies of Might of Old Krosa. What we do see here, though, is Gerard has a copy of Spellskite for turn 2, so he's really just blanking Andrew's entire hand.
Yeah, this is going to be real tough for Andrew if he has no way to get the Spellskite off the table.
Yeah, turn 2 is going to be 1 poison onto Gerard with that Inkmoth Nexus. But that may be the only poison Andrew... Well, he'll be able to stick 1 a turn, but
well, he can
we're
get
not
up
going to do it in chunks.
He can get up to 2 if he has another land, as he can activate the Nexus and then Pendelhaven it. But that's still a very slow burn, and plays right into cards like Disfigure out of Gerard's side.
And there is Spellskite for Gerard. So no Might of Old Crossing just yet. Go back over to Jessup. Right now, 2 copies, 2 lands, 2 copies of Iker Clamir. Gerard has put himself down to 13. We did see a game yesterday where Jessup was actually able to win a game against Ely Cassis by just overloading a Spellskite and forcing Ely to activate it so many times that it killed himself.
That did happen, though I think Gerard's deck is not going to be susceptible to the same sort of play pattern.
Seems unlikely. Inkmoth swings, it pumps. Cannot Spellskite the Pendelhaven ability.
It says target 1/1 creature.
Right, not target creature if it's a 1/1. So that'll put 2 more poison. Gerard up to 3. And we will see turn 3. He's going to go for a fetch here. Going through his deck, you see he has brought in his 2 copies of Fulminator Mage. An excellent answer to Inkmoth Nexus. Does he have the other one in his hand?
Be a really good spot for it.
Also has a copy of Disfigure in his hand. He'll go with Serum Visions. Drawing the card, we'll get a scry here, but I mean, mainly the idea is just to pull apart these Inkmoths with things like Disfigure or 1/1 removal, let Spellskite do the rest of the work, and play a finisher.
Yeah, I mean, with Spellskite in play uncontested, there's just not a lot of Andrew's deck that matters. He doesn't have a lot of live cards.
Suddenly, a lot of his cards just turn into 2-mana lava spikes, or 2 damage spikes. They're
Yeah, that Gerard can also pay a blue to fizzle and opt out of at any time. So it's just bad news all around.
the flag bearer card that is Spellskite. So good against this strategy. We've kind of seen that. Spellskite has just been an all-star on the weekend. Inkmoth Next is activated by Andrew. It's going to swing. Andrew's going to go for the pump with Pendelhaven, and now that he has tapped Pendelhaven, that will be the green light for Gerard to kill it. He's going to use a copy of Disfigure on Inkmoth Nexus. Yeah, Andrew, no sense in trying to save with Might of Old Krosa. That's just going to get Spellskited. He'll put it away, and no follow-up play from Jessup.
And Gerard finding Fulminator Mage for good measure here.
Seems all over but the win con. Gerard's going to cast Fulminator Mage.
And you may see Jessup just get beaten to death by a Fulminator Mage this game. If he doesn't find a Nexus.
Yeah, you could doubt. That doesn't even seem that surprising.
Yeah.
If he needs to get back into this, it seems like he would have to start with a removal spell for Spellskite and then go from there.
Or if he finds Blighted Agent and Gerard happens to not have a removal spell, he's got a prayer. He has the Pendle.
Sure, he has a Pendelhaven. Yeah, okay.
You know, but we're talking pretty slim odds here if he does not find a removal spell for Spellskite very quickly.
All right, and Jessup fetches for Breeding Pool. Now has access to his blue mana as well. Draws for the turn. It's a copy of Become Immense. That's not going to work. Pump spells, all still being blanked in the face of Spellskite. And, or is it Wild Defiance? He actually can go for that. Wild Defiance is a rather interesting card here from Avacyn Restored. Good against red removal, but not terrible here either. They play some number of copies of it in the main. He has 2. Whenever a creature Andrew controls is targeted by a spell, that creature, by instant or sorcery, that creature will get +3/+3 until end of turn.
So it makes chaining together a kill pretty easy, just because all of your pump spells are so much bigger. And then on top of that, it does do a very good job against red removal.
This actually gets around Spellskite in a lot of ways because the creature doesn't need to resolve, it just needs to target the creature. So this should turn on those Might of Old Krosas if Andrew manages to ever get an Infector going.
Yeah, unfortunately, Gerard with a copy of Nature's Claim there, so can't even get that ball rolling.
Nope, we'll have none of that. He'll claim it, swing back in Fulminator Mage. And now Snapcaster Mage for Serum Vision Star, just going to try to find more action. Remember, if he ever builds up something like Knight of Souls Betrayal, that's just lights out.
Right, and that's just such an incredible display of strength there from Gerard, using Snapcaster Mage to get back Serum Visions with a Disfigure in his graveyard.
Disfigure, yeah, Thoughtseize, Disfigure, now he's going to go for Serum Visions.
Yeah, this is just a clinic, a clinic here from Gerard.
Well, and then delving away, this is going to be Tassiger. So now the win con is in play for Gerard. The only leaving just 1 card in his graveyard. believe the copy of Serum Visions. Because you can never really draw too many of that.
I mean, this game from Gerard here is just a
gross.
straight beating. Never looked competitive for a moment.
And here's a swing for 8 from Fabiano. That'll put Jessup down to 12. Gerard doing a great job of presenting a relevant clock after presenting relevant disruption. And here's Inquisition of Kozilek from Gerard. He'll take a Might of Old Krosa for lack of nothing else to take. Andrew has drawn a Become Immense, a second Pendelhaven, another land. And here's Tarmogoyf from Gerard. That should be enough to make next turn lethal if he needs to. Draw from Jessup is Glistener Elf, but it's going to be far too late.
I mean, I guess you might as well cast it. I think it allows him to get to next turn. But this is all wrap up from here.
And there's Breeding Bull for Jessup. And huge army of creatures. Here's the Disfigure off the top for Gerard. Andrew will pump. That's fine by Gerard. Okay.
Yeah.
It's now a 0-1.
Perhaps a little bit hasty here from Gerard, but does not really matter. Our former colleague Andrew Trout used to refer to this as garbage time.
Yes.
and we're in garbage time right now.
Yeah. The game's over, but it's not actually over. You see a lot of this when people play decks like Miracles or Controlled. We had a lot of it with Sphinx's Revelation decks. But and here's going to be a swing with the team. Well, it's a reference that, that's a term you see that team used in basketball as well.
Right.
And there's 4 minutes left in the game and a team's up by 20. Just okay.
All our goal is no one gets hurt.
Yep. Here's a swing and a chump block from Jessup. One more turn, a draw, and it's a Misty Rainforest. And that will be it. There you have it, Gerard Fabiano taking the match in 2. And, on camera, his deck has been a clinic. It has taken down Twin, it has taken down Infect, it has taken down Obzon, and it has not dropped a game in doing any of them. And we'll see if he can continue that one in the top 8.
Yeah, and a point of clarification, Gerard was actually offered the draw last round, but was not in a position to accept it. Since a draw is
he couldn't take it.
Right, close to a loss, took his loss. But rally back this round, is the winner in the top 8, and just, what another 3 or 6 months, 9 months, 12 months from Gerard here. It's just been a clinic both in limited and in constructed. Baltimore's been very good for him. A Grand Prix win here a little while ago, and now top 8 of the first ever SCG Games Modern Open Series.